Welcome to the RNL, the Revolution Nothing Less show. This is our 194th episode. Today is May 2nd, 2024, and my name is Sunsara Taylor. Here on the Revolution Nothing Less show, we bring you the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's what many people do not want to hear. We bring you the truth that you need to hear, truth that the powers that be don't want you to hear, truth about the nature of the system that we live under, capitalism, imperialism, and about the need for an actual revolution, the complete overthrow of this system that we now live under. We bring you the truth as well about the possibility of a radically different, far better future that is possible through revolution as it has been re-envisioned by the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian. Bob Avakian is the architect of a whole new framework for human emancipation, what we call the new communism. And he is someone who has dedicated his life to forging the strategy for making a real revolution, to forging the scientific approach to continuing to learn ever more deeply about the world in order to change it in the most emancipating ways, to forging the vision of a new society that would be put in place, a new system implemented after the revolution. And Bob Avakian is actively leading now to advance this revolution. You will hear from him later in today's show. Now, we are filming today's episode at a time of great change and tumult in this country and in the world. We're filming at a time when the students are rising up on the campuses against the vicious genocide that Israel is carrying out against the people of Gaza with the full backing of the United States government. And at a time when there has been vicious, violent crackdown on these students. So at the top of today's show, I will bring you a report on this that I filmed yesterday out at UCLA campus. After that, we'll go to an interview that Andy Z did with Noche Diaz, a spokesperson for the Revcoms Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity. They talk about the rallies and celebrations that the Revcoms Corps is holding this weekend for Revolutionary Internationalist May Day and why you should come out and be part of these.
So this May Day 2024, when we raise this banner and we put forward a force of people who are raising that demand for a different world, and when we build the Revcoms Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity, the organized forces that are working for this revolution, that is putting on the map that we intend to seize the time. We intend to declare that we will fight for a world fit for the future generations of humanity, not the world that's being stuffed down our throat with brute force, violence, and contempt by the powers that be.
Then we will hear from Bob Avakian on why it is right to want revolutionary state power and what this state power is good for. Finally, we'll close out today's show with an alert about the artist Toomaj, who was just sentenced to death by the Islamic Republic of Iran for his defiant music and his fierce stand with the people who rose up in Iran 2 years ago against the mandatory hijab, the mandatory headscarf, and all the violence that is carried out against women and all the oppression that is built into that fundamentalist reactionary regime. So with that, let's go now to the campuses. As I said, we are here filming at UCLA in Southern California, the site of one of many of the student protest encampments against the genocide in Gaza that have propped up across this country in the last week and a half. These students who have stood up at Columbia, most of all, who have spread across the country from Texas to Minnesota to California, everywhere in between, have inspired the world, and for good reason. The people in Gaza have been saying thank you.
احنا اهل غزة بنبسط كتير لما نشوف طلاب امريكا واقفين معانا وحاسين فينا وجينا نشكركم بطريقتنا البسيطة. بتمنى تستقبلوها بحب.
Here last night, Police stood aside as Zionist thugs rampaged, violently attacked these nonviolent student protesters, and we are going to be bringing you some of their words. This was part of a nationwide assault on righteous students standing up. Nearly 300 arrests in New York City of protesters at Columbia University and CCNY, and the closing down of encampments across the country, even as more sprung up. And we in the Revolution Nothing Less show are here to say one side is right and one side is wrong. All the students, all the faculty, all the protesters who have stood up against this genocide in Gaza are right. Look at what is being done in Gaza now. Look at the hospitals destroyed. Look at the babies who have been murdered and orphaned. Look at the families who have been laid waste and buried in the coffins of their own homes that have been reduced to rubble. Look at the health workers and the artists who have been systematically targeted. This is genocide, and everybody with a conscience needs to stand up and speak out against it. They need to stand up and take the spirit of these courageous students who have put their bodies on the line, their careers on the line, their futures on the line, and stand with them to demand a stop to this genocide that the U.S. is backing, that Israel is carrying out against the people of Gaza. Right is on the side of the protesters. And we are here to say that wrong is on the side of the police, the administrations who have called them in, and the attacks and assaults by Zionist thugs and others on the protesters here and across the country. As I said, nearly 300 arrests in New York City alone last night. Here on this campus, we will show you footage of the testimonials of students right here on these steps just minutes ago who were assaulted, who were hospitalized, who were beaten and bear-maced, who were forced to get staples and stitches in their heads, who are injured, and who are back out here again today because police stood aside and let Zionist thugs attack them.
Yesterday, at the pro-Palestinian encampment, I was attacked not once, not twice, but 3 times. I arrived at 10:30, and immediately I could hear names being called and insults being thrown. But these weren't childhood playground insults. The people of color in our community were called the N-word. The people in the LGBT community were called the F-word. Women were called bitches, and they were threatened with rape. We were called Jew haters. We were called terrorists, and we were called Hamas lovers. And least offensively of all, we were called America haters. But if I'm not mistaken, only one side was upholding American values last night. Only one side. I saw women as young as 18 and 19 punched in the face by 25 or 30-year-old men. I saw women with blood streaming down their face, bloody, bruised, and beaten. I saw a singular man outside the encampment who couldn't have been older than 21, dragged by his hair, thrown onto the ground, beaten with kicks, with metal rods, with sticks, and with fists. During the 6-hour period in which I was attacked, the police stood by. I was dragged out into a group of 6 men who whipped my back, who attacked me with sticks, who punched my face, and to slash me with a sharp metal rod. All that time, I was being pepper sprayed. When I walked away to get treated, a hammer was thrown at the back of my leg. But the same fascist and supremacist ideology that comports so well with apartheid and illegal settlements and unfettered violence is the same exact ideology that comports so well with the violence we witnessed last night. I'm extremely proud to stand beside my fellow protesters in solidarity with the Palestinian people.
Last night was the scariest moment of my life. Counter-protesters attacked our peaceful encampment using chemical weapons such as pepper spray and much, much more. Throughout the estimated 4-hour attack of our encampment, I continuously became worried for my life. I remember texting my family group chat, telling them I love them, as if I was about to die. Fireworks were launched into the encampment. At one point, I saw a brave classmate of mine go outside the barricade wall to grab some much-needed objects for the barrier to protect our fellow classmates. He risked his life outside the fence to protect his classmates and brutally faced the repercussions of his actions. Inspired by his actions, I went outside the barrier to protect my friend. Almost immediately, a cone was thrown at my face, which has left an injury in my upper right forehead. Soon after, another counter-protester grabbed a wooden block and slashed the back of my head. Classmates, not police, classmates, not UCLA security, rushed me to receive medical care inside the encampment. I rushed to the hospital where I received several stitches on my upper right forehead, as seen above, and 14 staples in the back of my head. I want to take a moment to serve as a reminder for why this encampment exists. I had the ability to go to a hospital last night. Currently, in Gaza, there are 0 fully functioning hospitals. My cousins, who have passed away from this brutal genocide, did not have the luxury to go to a hospital after they were attacked. My cousins and friends do not have the luxury of sedating their injured regions of their body like I did last night. In Gaza, kids with amputations have been seen receiving no sedations. We, as students of UCLA, deserve justice. The children and families in Gaza deserve justice.
Yes.
Free, free, free Palestine!
Free, free, free Palestine!
Long live Palestine!
Long live Palestine!
Jazakallah khair.
And they are back out here today like students who have sprung up on encampments across the country and students who are coming back in Columbia and CCNY to say this genocide must stop.
I'm a second year at Columbia University and I'm an organizer with JVP and Quad. On Monday, a group of autonomous protesters took over the university's historic administrative building on campus without the use of any physical violence and renamed it Hind's Hall in memory of Hind Rajab, a martyred 6-year-old Palestinian girl who was violently murdered by the Israeli occupation forces in Gaza. We honor Hind to call attention to Israel's systematic disregard for Palestinian lives after Israeli soldiers prevented an emergency medical crew from reaching Hind and rescuing her as she sheltered in a car surrounded by the dead bodies of her family, who were murdered by the IOF. Columbia's surreal response to the protesters' non-violent takeover of Hind's Hall turned our campus into a war zone. The university called the NYPD to storm campus with militarized police, brutally attacking and arresting over 100 students with multiple hospitalizations. Following the attacks on protesters at Hind's Hall, the NYPD then removed our peaceful encampment on the lawn. Columbia's attempt to oppress the movement only strengthens our resolve. We are not finished because we stand on the right side of history. We stand for humanity. And we will not rest until Palestine is free. Students and faculty worldwide to escalate their protests. Our universities, which put profit over life, must grind to a halt until our demands are met. Divestment, disclosure, an end to campus militarization, and amnesty for all.
Columbia and the cops collaborated to brutalize my classmates in the dark for standing up for what is right. The mainstream media is currently lying about outside detractors and overblowing property damage in order to justify brutality and distract from their complicity in genocide, just as they did with the civil rights movement, Black Lives Matter, and every other social movement for change. I was posting videos of the police throwing tables and breaking windows in real time yesterday. To be clear, The police caused far more property damage and physical endangerment than my classmates ever did. How many more children have to be trapped under the rubble of our bombs for you all to wake up? History will not look kindly upon you. 6-year-old Hind Rajab's name will be memorialized in textbooks and on Columbia's website one day. Her story is just one of the over 40,000 slaughtered Palestinians that we could not possibly name enough buildings after. Last week, President Joe Biden sent $14.1 billion to fund more genocide. Money that could be used to fund our health care is being funneled to destroy the last standing hospitals in Gaza. We Americans are the most complicit in the worst atrocities of modern history. We refuse to be distracted from genocide.
The wrong is on the side of this system. And right now it is being exposed. All their claims of freedom and democracy, all their claims of free speech and academic freedom, what is being revealed right now in this illegitimate, outrageous repression on these heroic and brave protesters and students is the actual nature of this system. It is a capitalist, imperialist dictatorship. You have so-called rights unless and until you challenge the fundamental interests of empire. Then they come down like a hammer, and that is what is being revealed here today. So 3 things need to happen. 3 things need to happen. 1, the protests on the campuses need to come back stronger, and this spirit of resistance and protest needs to spread throughout all of society. 2, we must have the backs of and defend all the students who've been expelled and suspended, arrested, harassed and brutalized, doxxed and had their futures threatened, all the faculty who have stood with them, and all the protesters across the country who have stood with them. We must have their backs and demand all the charges be dropped, all the suspensions be suspended, that they not be allowed to divide this movement that has right on its side. And 3, we here at the Revolution Nothing Less show are calling on everybody who sincerely agonizes about the future, who wants to see a world without the kind of barbaric brutality and violence that we see being carried out in Gaza against the people there now, who wants to see a world without this violent repression and suppression that we see coming down on the students and other courageous protesters, to learn about and dig deeply into this system that we live under, capitalism, imperialism. It is a system that cannot be fixed. It cannot be reformed. It cannot be made good. It must be overthrown through a real revolution. Learn about this revolution. Dig into the analysis, the far-sighted revolutionary leadership that Bob Avakian is providing to understand what is driving these attacks, what is driving this war on Gaza, and what it will take to bring this system down and bring about a whole better way we could be living, a whole different way that we can relate to each other, to humanity, to the planet. A real world liberating struggle through an actual revolution. Learn about this and join us in the streets on Revolutionary May Day as we take this message of revolution into the neighborhoods, put it on the map in society, and get organized to make it real in this rare time when it is more possible. And you see the power of the people. You see the potential of the youth rising up. This is so important. It points to the strength on the side of the people. But now we need to get organized with the science, with the leadership, with the understanding to take this towards the only solution, an actual revolution. That's what we are calling you in to learn about, be part of on Revolutionary May Day as we stand here together and salute and have the backs of those standing up. After we filmed that yesterday out at UCLA, the scene there and the scene on campuses across the country got even more intense. So we are adding this update. Just since yesterday and overnight, police arrested more than 90 students and protesters at Dartmouth College in New Hampshire, 15 at Fordham University in New York, nearly 36 at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, at least 17 at the University of Texas, Dallas, and at least 132 arrests at UCLA overnight and in the wee hours of this morning. This brings the total number of arrests of students and others on campuses protesting the genocide in Gaza to more than 1,300 in the last 2 weeks alone. Members of the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity were out at UCLA all day yesterday and then late into the night, overnight in fact, just leaving this morning a couple of hours ago. They were there together with thousands of others, students and people from all across Los Angeles. As we will show you from their Instagram stories throughout the night and from other footage, the scene was one of tremendous courage, determination, and even joy. This is Michelle Chai of the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity speaking late last night.
I'm Michelle Chai, and we're out here at UCLA. Tonight there was a dispersal order that was issued, so we're currently sitting on the steps. We're doing a sit-in, and look, we're bringing the message of revolution. We're here to defend the rights and lives of students. We cannot allow the repression against these pro-Palestinian voices to continue to go on. So we're here today. One, the resistance, this beautiful, inspiring resistance that we've been seeing from Columbia University all the way to here at UCLA. It needs to spread, and it has the potential to spread all over society. That's why we're here, to strengthen that and to spread that. Two, we are here to defend all anti-genocide protesters. Do not let them divide and demonize a movement with right on our side. And three, everyone that's here needs to go to deeper questions. Why is this happening? Why is it that this imperialist system is continuing this horrific genocide against the Palestinian people? Why is it that at the same time when these righteous protesters are standing up and saying no more, they're coming in with their police and their riot gear? We, the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity, invite you to dig into these questions, to go and listen to number 27 of the Avakian dispatches on the social media to get a scientific understanding of why that is. And we invite you to come on May Day and march and say we need and we demand a revolution for a whole different way to live, a fundamentally different system. Stop this U.S.-Israeli genocide against the Palestinians now, and stop capitalism and imperialism from stealing our future.
In a minute, we will play a clip from the social media dispatch Michelle spoke of from Bob Avakian, where he pulls back the lens and gives a strategic view on why the U.S. cannot back off their support for Israel's genocide in Gaza, and why they are driven to such vicious repression and attacks against the students and others standing up against this. First, a bit more footage from last night. Around 6 p.m., people were told to leave the encampment.
You will be violating the law and may be subject to administrative and criminal actions.
But instead, as I mentioned, all night long, more protesters showed up. They screamed at the top of their lungs to stop the genocide in Gaza. They defended the students and their encampment. They did this in the face of force and repression being brought down on them. Several times, these protesters nonviolently linked arms and stood their ground outside the encampment and repelled police attempts to storm it. Here's another update from Michelle, followed by a bit more footage of the scene throughout the night and the morning.
It is 3:55 in the morning. What you hear behind me is the CHP moving in on the encampment. Students are not backing down in the encampment. People are holding the line. You know, just a few hours ago, at 1 in the morning, LAPD moved in on the encampment and they had to make a tactical retreat. We, the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity, we're standing here with the students, defending the rights and lives of students, and not allowing these, these pigs to, just be allowed to come in and illegitimately arrest and destroy the encampment of these students that are righteously standing up, inspiring people across the country, and are saying no business as usual while a genocide is being done.
The world is watching. The world is watching. The world is watching. ACAB. Free Palestine. Free Palestine.
Students are now re-barricading to keep the police line from the students who are on the steps.
What are you doing? This is a school! We fucking learn!
Oh my goodness. This is so dangerous. Again, they're shooting rubber bullets, but I can tell you from doing stories about rubber bullets, they are extremely painful. If they hit your leg, your arm, they could break your arm. Now, it's important to consider this. After the violence on Tuesday night that you heard about in the press conference footage that we just shared with you earlier, many students were asking themselves whether they were willing to come back out or come out for the first time and really put themselves on the line with all they knew of the high stakes at this point. But the example set by others and the moral outrage of what's being done to the people of Gaza compelled them to feel that they had to act. One student told us, "It's now or never." Another said, "I'm scared, and my mom is scared, but I can't stand by." When people were able to repel the police, at least for a while, there was a feeling of elation and awe. Some folks were literally saying, "Did we just do that?" One student told us, "I will never see the police in the same way." People were going through big changes rapidly. Big questions were being thrown up. And there were students who wanted to talk to us deeply about communism and a real socialist revolution. Revolution, see, real revolution, not some changes that leave this system intact or try to make things better for just a few people. Real revolution is a leap for these students. It's a leap for everybody in this society right now. It is a rupture out of all the frameworks and assumptions they have learned in school, in society more broadly, and even in the rest of the movement. Real revolution is radical. But this is something that more people were willing to learn about and discuss more deeply than they normally are. And they need to. All of you watching right now need to not just learn about revolution, but seriously take it up and join us in fighting for it and spreading it. So now we want to go to that clip from Bob Avakian's social media dispatch, number 27, that Michelle mentioned earlier. Here he talks about why is this repression coming down so hard on these students, and why can't the U.S. back off their support for Israel and its genocide?
As I've said previously in message number 17, this repression is happening now because fundamental interests of U.S. capitalism, imperialism are at stake. Because Israel plays a special role as a heavily armed bastion of support for U.S. imperialism in a strategically important part of the world, the Middle East. And Israel has been a key force in the commission of atrocities which have helped to maintain the oppressive rule of U.S. imperialism in many other parts of the world. And this repression is happening because representatives of the ruling class in this country have a definite sense that if youth, especially at elite universities, begin to seriously question and act against what this system is doing, if the system loses the allegiance of large numbers of those students, that can be a big factor in creating a real crisis for the system as a whole, as happened in the 1960s. A crisis that now more than ever, this system really cannot afford when the whole country is already being torn apart by deep divisions with bitter clashes right among the ruling powers. So, at the same time as they are bitterly divided, the ruling powers of this country are firmly united in their determination to punish and intimidate especially students at elite universities who have stepped forward to protest the genocidal slaughter of Palestinians. The ruling class is desperate to prevent opposition to its fundamental interests from spreading and involving masses of people from all parts of society. And the fact that 60 years after the original free speech movement at UC Berkeley, there is once again a need for this kind of massive opposition to the vicious repression of people protesting profound injustice and horrific genocidal atrocity. This highlights sharply the fact that there is the even more fundamental need for a revolution to finally abolish this whole system of capitalism imperialism, its actual repressive dictatorship over people in this country, and its massive war crimes and crimes against humanity all over the globe.
That was an excerpt from Bob Avakian's social media dispatch number 27. We urge you to go to his social media platform at Bob Avakian Official on all platforms and listen to that dispatch in its entirety. It's quite expansive and deep in what to draw out of this crisis, what openings it provides for revolution, what lessons we need to draw from it. And while you're at Bob Avakian Official, listen to the rest of his dispatches. Start with 1 through 11. This lays a foundation for why only a real revolution can solve the problems that humanity is facing, how this revolution can be made, and why we're in a rare time when it's more possible than it's been in generations. These are truths the powers that be do not want you to know. It is revolutionary leadership in real time. So at Bob Avakian Official, subscribe. And finally, before we close out this update on the campus situation, we want to bring you footage from our very own Rafael Caderas, who has been on the scene in New York City, mostly up at Columbia University, but also at CCNY and other schools in recent days. He is one of the more than 1,300 who've been arrested in the last 2 weeks standing up against the genocide in Gaza. And it's worth it to hear what he had to say as he was being taken away in handcuffs by the NYPD. After we share that with you, we will go to Andy Z and Noche Diaz talking about why you should come out this weekend to rallies across the country and celebrations of Revolutionary Internationalist May Day.
My name is Rafael Caderas. I'm with the Revcoms, Revolutionary Communists. Follow us at the Revcoms, tweet this, post this on Instagram, tag us. We cannot let them get away with suppressing the voices, with arresting people all over the country who are doing the right thing and standing up to stop a genocide. This is not just the Jewish lobby, the Zionist lobby. This is U.S. imperialism, backing an apartheid state, carrying out a genocide. They are finding mass graves right now in Gaza, in Khan Yunis, at hospitals, where that are supposed to be centers of healing. They have turned them into graveyards. Everyone with a conscience should be fighting to stop this genocide. And look at what these police are doing here and all over the country. They are arresting people. What does this tell you about this system? It tells you it's not a democracy for all. It is a dictatorship of the capitalist imperialist system. And when they perceive you threatening that dictatorship, they come down on you. They arrest you. This dictatorship needs to be overthrown. The only way it can be, by a revolution. Millions of people fighting for a revolution to overthrow it. That's what we're organizing for. We have leadership for this revolution. In Bob Avakian, follow it at Bob Avakian Official on social media. Follow the Revcoms. We are organizing now.
I'm here in Hollywood, California on May 1st, 2024, May Day. And I'm here with Noche Diaz, the spokesperson for the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity. How are you doing, Noche?
Good. Good to be here and good to talk with you and all of you at home.
So, Noche, we're going to take this opportunity at the May Day Immigrants' Rights March that happens every year in Los Angeles to talk about what the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity has called for this weekend in cities across the country, a revolutionary internationalist May 1st. And this is happening in an incredible situation. This is a time that's just pregnant with change. So, Noche, how do you see in this situation the demands for May 1st, Revolutionary International May Day?
Thanks, Andy. Look, everybody has now seen it. By the time you're watching this, we were awoken from our beds last night, or some of us were still up, or some of us got up this morning and saw the wave of attacks on students all over this country. another day to show you what it means to have to live under this system with its force and violence that it uses to force people to live this way. Once again, as we have said from Bob Avakian, we can no longer allow these imperialists to continue to run the world and control the destinies of humanity. We need and we demand a revolution for a whole new way to live in a fundamentally different system, and that revolution is not far off. Some dream, something that can only come about one fine day. You can see in the example of the students stepping out and not backing down, but you can see the potential in all of that and how that reshapes society and what everybody has to think about and has to relate to. That is going to happen even more and more all year. So this May Day 2024, when we raise this banner and we put forward a force of people who are raising that demand for a different world, and when we build the Revcom Corps for the emancipation of humanity, the organized forces that are working for this revolution, that is putting on the map that we intend to seize the time. We intend to declare that we will fight for a world fit for the future generations of humanity, not the world that's being stuffed down our throat with brute force, violence, and contempt by the powers that be.
So I want you to go a little more into this question of this demand for a radically different way we could be living, a whole new way to live in a fundamentally different system that we've been taking out to people.
Yeah, well, look, you know, everyone needs to understand, like, there's a lot of demands being raised right now that are righteous and that need to be taken further in terms of stopping the U.S.-Israeli genocide against the Palestinian people. And that demand and that movement to force them to do that, to stop this now, has to spread, and the people need to be defended who are coming under attack. But more than anything, we need to look squarely at the fact that this is no accident. Okay, and so long as the people who run this system are allowed to maintain this way of life, not only the genocide being carried out in Palestine, but the way this whole system is stealing our future through the destruction of the environment and the potential for world war, as the U.S. not only backs this genocide, but is backing a proxy war with Russia in the Ukraine and is threatening China, is a big-time thug, the world's #1 thug, and that is threatening the whole future of humanity. This is what it means to live under this system. And this is why, as we're, facing this serious, urgent situation with the genocide in Gaza and the looming invasion in Rafah, we have to struggle with everybody to see that not only do we have to fight these outrages, but this is our time to understand the weaknesses of this system. They're not doing all of this just from the strength that they have to bully the world. They're doing this because if they don't, not only bully the world, but also repress things like the students who they rely on to be loyal to this system and what it's doing around the world. If they don't do that, they can't keep their whole thing together. And they're increasingly running into trouble in their ability to do that, as you see, and as we need to make them see even more. So we need to take hold of that in this time. Again, not in some future situation, but in this time, to rip this all the way open and to make the chance for revolution a reality. As Bob Avakian has said, these are times when something terrible will come along, even more terrible than normal life, or something truly emancipating can be wrenched out of this situation that we're in now. But we have to go to work to make that a reality. May Day 2024, this is an important turning point and step to projecting that and building up the organized forces for this revolution.
What we want to do now, since we're talking about fighting for a whole new world, is play a question and an answer from the interview that Sunsara Taylor and I did with Bob Avakian in 2022 on why is state power in the hands of the right people and for the right objectives a really good thing. So we're going to play that now, and then Noche and I are going to come back for a final word about Revolutionary Internationalist May Day 2024.
So we wanted to start right out with asking you, you have made the bold statement that it is right to want state power, that state power in the hands of the right people and the right class is a great thing. And to wildly understate it, this is not how most people think about state power. Why is state power a great thing?
Well, you have to begin with what you referred to, in the hands of the right class of people, the right kind of state power based on the right kind of system. One reason why a lot of people may not think state power is so great is because they're living under the exercise of it by these monstrous oppressors. So the idea, the idea is promoted, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and all this bullshit from some British lord, So, people are, inclined to look at the way things are now and how power is exercised and have a hard time imagining it could be exercised in a different way by different people. And so the reason I say state power is a great thing is because in order to do all the things that we need to do to uproot all this oppression, you have to have power in society in order to do them. I mean, the reason we can't do them now is because the wrong people, that is a class of exploiters, the capitalist imperialists, have state power and use that state power to suppress any attempt at seriously uprooting all this oppression. So we need a different kind of state power, a socialist state power that, first of all, is radically different in terms of what it's based on, what it's aiming for, and also whom it involves in the exercise of state power. It's involving the masses of people increasingly in playing an initiating role and a conscious role in transforming society. And unlike the present system, socialist state power backs up the masses of people in moving to uproot all this oppression, while it also provides leadership to them to see what they're up against, what are the contradictions they have to break through on in order to uproot all this, and how to wage that struggle. So it's a completely different kind of state power. Any idea, just think about it, any idea that you were going to overthrow the existing system and then you're not going to have any state power, guess what happens? You are going to have state power. It's going to be the state power you just overthrew will be back in power in a quick minute. So the whole idea that you can do without a state, without state power, yes, you need a radically different kind of state power, but you need power to be able to lead masses of people and back them up in making all these transformations. What happens now when people go out? First of all, the state power, I'll just back up a second, will be radically different. You're not going to have a police force that murders people on a daily basis in order to maintain a system of oppression. The police forces, we will need police forces, we will need armed forces to defend the revolution. But these forces will be radically different. They will be the masses of people who have risen up to make the revolution in the first place. That's from whom the police and the armed forces will be drawn. And I've made this statement before. Some people say, "Whoa, wait a minute! You're going to take all these people out here running around right now, shooting each other and selling drugs, and you're going to give them state power?" I don't think so. I don't think I want to be part of that. No, we're not talking about people as they are now. We're talking about people. Go back to the question that Andy raised in a previous talk. A previous interview we were doing, people as they've been radically transformed, as they've radically transformed themselves on the basis of being struggled with in the course of transforming the world and making revolution. So then, the state power is going to be in the hands of masses of people who've been struggled with to be emancipators of humanity and to make a revolution on that basis. And, there's a lot of experience in the history of revolution, and particularly communist revolution, that we can draw from, that it is possible to transform people. Like when they made the revolution in China, for example, which took a different path, just to be clear, for anybody out there, just to be clear, was a revolution that in those particular circumstances was made by waging armed struggle from the very, very beginning. Armed struggle from the beginning and throughout. That was the character of the Chinese Revolution because of the particular character of Chinese society and the conditions that they were dealing with. Our revolution is different. It's a period of carrying out the three prepares through political and ideological work and, yes, standing up and defending the people and fighting the power. but not attempting to wage an armed struggle until the conditions for that have been brought into being. That's where the three preparers come in. That's what we're working toward, but that's not what we're doing now. But there's still something to learn from the Chinese Revolution. You know, when Mao started up the People's War in China, the armed struggle against the existing oppressive government and the imperialists who were behind it, the U.S. and Britain in particular, he said, I went to the brave elements, what we might call the brothers and sisters on the street, you know, in our circumstances. He said, I went to them because they weren't afraid to die. But then a tremendous amount of struggle had to be waged. What's this about? What's this armed struggle for? This is not armed struggle to go out and rip off people. You know, they had to have points of attention, you know, to make sure that the people were adhering to the principles of the revolution and applying the principles of the revolution. You know, things like you don't take a needle or a thread from the masses of people. You don't go about, you know, this was mainly a male army at that time, although the masses of women did become involved. You don't go abusing women. You know, there are different principles here that had to do with the revolution that we're carrying out. And there was struggle, and they, you know, that's why they had to have those points of discipline and points of attention. So we're talking about masses of people who've been transformed through struggle and transforming themselves in order to bring about the revolution we're talking about and bring into being the necessary state power. But that state power, once established, will be completely different, radically different. The role of state power and whether it really serves the revolution to emancipate the masses of people or whether it actually constitutes another oppressive force over the masses of people is determined by the content of that state power, by the line, the politics and ideology and program that it's based on and that is leading it. That's how you know, and that's how the masses of people can be led to evaluate what's the character of this state power? Is this state power that's standing above the mass of people and turning into an oppressive force that's going to actually restore the old system of exploitation and oppression? Or is this a state power by its content, by its actions, by the way it's being led, by what it's fighting for, by what's guiding it, is actually backing up and supporting the masses of people in emancipating themselves and supporting the revolution throughout the world toward the same goal of emancipation, uprooting and eliminating all antagonistic conflicts among people, all forms of oppression and exploitation. But that's why state power, I mean, yes, I want us to have state power, not the three of us sitting here, but the masses of people who've risen up to make a revolution so that they can carry through what they fought for in that revolution. And yes, so that they can actually back up the masses of people in carrying out those transformations and prevent anyone from actually overthrowing the system that exists and re-enslaving the masses of people. So, you know, this is why state power, socialist state power, is a great thing to have. And it's something we should, you know, everyone who wants to see a more just world should be hungering for this state power, not, you know, worrying about what it'll be like. Yeah, there needs to be a struggle over what it's going to be like, you know, and that will be an ongoing struggle. But we should be primarily hungering for that state power because that's the power that will enable these transformations I'm talking about. Now, to be clear, since I said it will prevent people from overthrowing the socialist system, that doesn't mean that there won't be allowance for dissent. Doesn't mean that we don't need a lot of intellectual and cultural ferment. We do. That's all embodied in the Constitution for the new socialist republic in North America. You know, anyone who raises objections to what the government is doing or what the policies are, or even to the very existence of a socialist state, will be allowed to do so. And there will even be ways that criticism is encouraged and fostered and dissent, because you need that. You need to know what your shortcomings are. And the masses of people need to thrash out what's right and wrong, what will really lead to on the road of emancipation, and what, you know, even though it might say it's doing that, is actually leading back to the old way. So, you know, there'll be a flourishing and even a promotion of dissent. By that I mean even in the, you know, in the arts and the media and so on, provision made for people to have a vehicle to criticize and raise dissent, even while, you know, people who try to violently overthrow the new socialist system will be prevented from doing so. Oh, well, you're just like the people in power now. You know, that's what they say. You can dissent as long as you don't try to seriously challenge them. Well, no, we're not just like them. You know, for one thing, they don't encourage and promote dissent. They limit dissent within a very narrow sphere. But second of all, once again, we're back to what's the nature, what's the character of that state power? And the reason we're not like them is because what the state power is for, what it concretely does, what it supports the masses of people in doing, what philosophy or ideology, what program, what politics, what social relations it's all embodying and promoting, which are the complete and direct opposite of what exists under this system. So no, we're not just like them at all. We're radically different.
That was Bob Avakian from the interviews we did with him on the RNL show on why state power is a really good thing, why we should crave it. So Noche, you talked about we need a revolution to actually get that state power, and that this May 1st, the Revcom Corps for the emancipation of all of humanity is calling for May Day as part of preparing for and organizing the forces for that revolution. So why don't you give a closing message for what people can expect and why they should be there?
Part of the reason for it is what you just heard. We actually could be living a whole different way, and we have to be fitting ourselves now. Not just us who are in the revolution already, but us, the masses of people, fitting ourselves to run a whole different way to organize society. And look, what the students did over these last few days really smashed the sort of the image and the weight of what had been too much going on of the sleepwalking through the nightmare. All right, and they gave a different example, and they faced some of the brutality that people who live in the neighborhoods of this system face every day. The boot and the gun, no future. But you see the example being set, the inspiring example of what these students did and what they faced and came back in the face of. Think about if people did that for the emancipation of humanity. Think if people were doing that with the determination to fight through, to put an end to what this system is doing, not just in Gaza, but the same system that's doing that all around the world, destroying the environment, threatening nuclear war and world war. People here, black and Latinos, being murdered or massively incarcerated, women having their basic right to control their body ripped from them, LGBT people, trans people being, put back into the shadows, threatened with the right to even be in public spaces. Immigrants having to flee their homelands, travel the earth because of what this system is doing there, and only to be faced with the demonization and brutal repression by the same system that destroyed their homelands. Imagine if people who didn't want to live in that world were standing up together. People who were like each other and nothing like each other. Students from elite universities like Columbia or UCLA, and people from neighborhoods like Harlem or the Crenshaw area that we'll be at here in LA. Imagine if they were standing shoulder to shoulder and learning to work for something bigger than themselves. Look, I've been talking to people here. They talk about how difficult it is to shake off the ways of acting and thinking that you have to go along with to live under this system, but also how inspiring and uplifting it is to finally live for something that truly matters. Ask yourself, if you're not there with people like that this May Day weekend, what are you doing? And if you're not finding out about how we could actually be living a whole different way and the people who got the plan, who got the leadership, if you're not there, where are you going to be? Well, don't be asking yourself that. Actually, just be there. Be part of learning about those who are raising this demand for revolution and a whole new way to live in a fundamentally different system.
All right, Noche, thank you. Look, This is not some far-off thing. We are not just, as you said earlier, Noche, we are not just saying we need a revolution. We are actively preparing for it in a time when the society is very divided and there's the possibility of revolution. You come to these May Day celebrations, you learn about why that's so, the analysis and the leadership that Bob Avakian is giving to you directly in his social media posts every day. So with that, Noche, we hope to see all of you there on May 4th, May 5th, for Revolutionary Internationalist May Day. All right.
This brings us to the end of today's Revolution Nothing Less show. Before we close out, a word about the Iranian rapper Toomaj Salehi. Toomaj was just sentenced to death by the reactionary Islamic Republic of Iran. The final decision on this will come down in the next couple weeks, and around the world, millions need to raise their voice to demand free Toomaj. Toomaj is loved by millions, but he is hated by the reactionary Islamic fundamentalist regime of Iran. He is one of Iran's political prisoners being held in the brutal hellhole of Evin prison. He was arrested for taking part in the 2022 Woman Life Freedom Uprising, where millions of women threw off the forced hijab and filled the streets in mass protest. Toomaj spoke out against the vicious oppression of women in his art and on the streets, and he called for unity among different nationalities against the regime. He provided anthems for the uprising, beautiful music that inspired and strengthened people in their struggle.
مناره خشم هزار بی صداییم شورشی کمریشه انقلابی داریم عرب و آشوری ارمنی ترکمن مازنی سیستانی و بلوچ و تالش و تات و آذری کرد و گیلک یور فارسی قشقایی ما اتحاد رودهاییم دریاییم ورزشکار و هنرمند دست فروش تا کاسب از محصل و معلم مهندس تا کارگر میکنیم کرگوش دیکتاتور و با ساز حق زن زندگی آزادی میجنگیم تا پای مرگ شونه به شونه پا به پا دیوار دفاعی باورم به هم بستگی مثل ایمان الهی مثل مسخ دین مثل مجنون بی باکسینه چاکی میران تومه مطیع این بیگانه ها نیست میدون جنگه اثر رنگی هستی بیا که بدون تو یه خونه لنگه میدون جنگه بیا که بخت تاختن تو دل دشمن بدون ترس.
To suppress this uprising, the Iranian regime came down hard with vicious repression. They imprisoned and even executed people who led these mass protests. The charges against Toomaj are for, quote, waging war against God and, quote, corruption on earth. And I want to quote one of Toomaj's lyrics that he rapped in 2022. He said, "We're the furious shout of 1,000 silent ones. Rebel isn't enough. We've a revolutionary root." Toomaj's fearless spirit of defiance needs to ring out, from the struggle to stop the U.S.-backed genocide of Palestinian people to the women everywhere held down by patriarchal oppression. Everyone, everywhere, worldwide, raise the demand, free Toomaj, free all Iranian political prisoners now. All right, so I want to thank everybody who donated to the successful fundraising live stream that we held here on this channel last week, and continue to give and support this revolution with your finances, with your time, with your participation. Come out this weekend to the celebrations of Revolutionary Internationalist May Day. I want to give a thanks to the whole crew who pulled this show together, the Revolution Nothing Less crew, out on the street, in the studio, working hard. And I want to say we will see you back here next week.